Um, like, because their shows weren't just like, you know, play a song.
No. Well, when I first saw Cart play, probably, I don't know, maybe 1992 or one, I can't remember. I thought they were terrible. Only because my whole, at that time, like my background in any kind of like rock music was just radio or whatever. So I'm used to people having like really structured songs that make sense with, bridges and choruses and stuff. And I really knew nothing about music, but I was like, wow, I'm really intrigued by this, but I think they might be really bad. But I really like it. But it feels like it's just, like how the early Carp singles are just kind of like, that's how they sounded. Like how they're mixed really bad and like they're just really ramshackle. And that's how they sounded live to me at that time. And so it was awesome because it was so loud. Like you definitely felt this energy, but at the same time I was like, I think they're terrible. But that totally changed like within a year. I feel like they're probably still learning their instruments at the time. So, and I had just started playing guitar, so I wasn't judging at all. I was just like, I like it, but it's bad. I don't know. And then it got really good.
What everybody pretty much said.
Really?
So
Okay, yeah.
like,
It was
the
bad.
first year was like really horrible.
It was bad. But in a really awesome way. Like it wasn't like you wanted to leave or anything. It was just like I was still new to this idea that you didn't really have to know how to play an instrument to be in a band and play on a stage or at a party or something. So I was a little confused, but ultimately totally intrigued. And I just had some part of me that I didn't know about before was really obsessed with loud guitars. And so seeing bands like Carp and some Velvet Sidewalk, who I also thought were really bad, but great, had a huge impact on me about this idea of like playing a really loud guitar. Yeah.
So how would you describe Olympia, like as far as the music scene, like in the early '90s, just in general, like the really important parts that
Well,
what I mean?
it's hard to kind of say what exactly I thought. When I think about the Olympia scene in the early '90s now, because when I was experiencing it then, I was 16 years old, and so it seems so amazing. I mean, that's such a generic term, but so amazing, so full of just like wildly diverse, talented, but also not trained musicians, but people who are really, really kind of went for it. And there was a lot of that, especially with like the Riot Girl scene, like a lot of politics involved and just this real intensity. Like to me, a lot of shows that I went to just almost seemed like things were at a boiling point or could at any moment just go in really wild. And now when I go to shows, and I think it's probably just because I'm older, I feel like there's less of that dangerous element, that kind of not physically dangerous, but just dangerous in the way that anything could happen and everything could happen. And it just seemed like the possibilities for the sound and the ideas of bands were kind of limitless. And I think that's a lot related to youth and my age at the time of just, you feel things so intensely as a teenager that every show I went to meant so much to me. Whereas now I feel like I'm more of an audience member where I can really appreciate things, or I'm bored by others, or, but it was just a time where there was so much energy. I feel like energy would be a good way to describe the early '90s punk scene in Olympia.
And you were kind of doing it before, but I was wondering if you would talk about, like, you're talking about how there's like this group of like kind of like outside thinkers that don't think like the surrounding areas, right?
Yeah.
And you were kind of starting to go into kind of like a basic timeline of like where you thought it came from, like in Olympia.
Oh, I made a poster.
Yeah, you should
Do you
tell
want
me about that.
You want me to show you?
Sure.
Okay. So I think before the whole Evergreen State College thing happened in Olympia, it was maybe a little bit more devoid of these kind of wild thinkers, free thinkers, artist types, and punkers. And so this summer, the city of Olympia hired me and my friend Timba to make a series of letterpress posters about the history of Olympia, and we chose to pick different things we thought were more subversive. So this is a timeline of the punk and DIY revolution in Olympia, and there's a lot of stuff left out. But so we're going to start with Chaos Radio, the independent radio station at Evergreen State College was established in 1973, and a lot of people who are kind of, the godfathers or godmothers of the scene had radio shows like Calvin, etc. And so Op Magazine was a local fanzine, although it was kind of published in a little bit slicker way, not a glossy magazine by any means. Was started by some people who were involved in chaos in 1979. And the interesting thing was that some of the people involved in this went on to form or to own Mix 96, which is the local soft rock station playing your soft rock hits of the Great Northwest. But they're really great people. And then so in 1980, the Sub Pop fanzine came out of this whole chaos scene as well. And that, I believe, Calvin was somehow involved in all of this and established K Records in 1982, putting out cassette releases, etc. In 1984, Yo-Yo Recordings was founded by Pat Malley, also another chaos-related person, I believe, and he went on to do that first Yo-Yo A-Go-Go music festival in 1994, which, tracking back, there was the IPU, International Pop Underground Festival, that Calvin and Candace K formed in 1991. And that was kind of the big first independent music festival we had in Olympia. I think Fugazi played and, Unwound and Bikini Kill and all these bands. And my mom wouldn't let me go to it because I was too young, and that really pissed me off. But my brother filmed it for the local community television station. And let's see, so then Chainsaw was established here in 1986 by Donna Dresch, and it was a zine, and then she went on to have a record label, put out the first Slater-Kinney records, et cetera, et cetera. Kill Rock Stars, founded by Slim Moon and Tanuvial Sampson, if I'm saying that right, established in 1991. And, of course, I don't know, everybody probably knows Unwound, Bikini Kill, Slater-Kinney, all those bands, Kill Rock Stars. Same time, the Riot Girl movement, established in D.C. and Olympia, Washington, and the Bay Area, was just gaining ground, and that was a really huge, integral part of really getting awareness for inclusivity of women in the punk scene, because there had been kind of this whole hardcore scene before that really excluded women. So this poster kind of revolves around this whole idea that the International Pop Underground Festival paved the way for Yo-Yo, which paved the way for the Lady Fest, 2000, the original Lady Fest, which went on to be a worldwide phenomenon, and then Homo Go-Go, celebrating queers in music and art in 2002. So, in a nutshell, there it is.
Excellent. You get what you asked for, I guess.
I just I can't remember the guy's name's not magazine, so I don't know. Give him a shout out.
You're saying basically that it starts with Evergreen then?
I don't know if it starts with Evergreen because I don't know. I mean, there's certainly garage bands here, in the 50s and 60s. There's a huge Northwest garage scene, and I know that Olympia, we had the Fleetwoods. That was a really big band. And but I think the kind of punk, this idea of that you didn't have to know how to play an instrument to be in a band, and the idea of making a fanzine, subverting the world of magazines and newspapers, and making your own news and your own culture report. I think it did come from Evergreen. I don't know, that would be my idea about why Olympia is pretty radical. I mean, we all joke about Evergreen's big hippie school where you get credit for going on camping trips, basically, and you can study Birkenstock technology, etc. But it's pretty important.
you almost started kind of doing it, but can you explain what Evergreen is?
Oh, yeah. Evergreen State College is a pretty world renowned liberal arts college that, there's no grades. It's generally referred to by people as a big hippie school, but it's a really great school for sciences and art stuff. And it was founded by a Republican, Dan Evans, who had a very interesting idea about how a college should be run. You don't take classes, you have integrated programs, stuff like that. And so it's kind of a experiment that stuck around, and a lot of people move here every year to go to Evergreen. That's how we get the new influx of punker kids every year. Is a lot of Evergreen students. It's also made Olympia a really transitory town. Like it seems like people move here for maybe 4 years to go to Evergreen, and then they stick around for 3 years, and then they move to New York or Portland or something. But it's really transitory; it changes all the time, and I think that's why the music scene is always changing.
So let me ask you this. So this is a two-parter. Like, basically, like what year Evergreen was founded, or just generally
I don't
speaking?
know. I feel like it was like 1971 or something.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Early 70s.
And then the other thing is, it doesn't seem like intuitive from the descriptions that I have from people about what the town was like then, that they would have just been like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's build a cool hippie college.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was definitely, well, it's before my time. But I think it was born in the early 70s by Dan Evans, Republican governor. And it was a really radical idea, and I'm not sure that it was wholly embraced. But, it was the 70s, so maybe everybody was more open to the idea of integrated studies and no grades and, feel your way through college. I went there, and I took art, and I took painting, and there was actually no technical classes. They were just like, just paint. Feel your way through painting, and eventually you'll figure out what you're supposed to paint. So it's a great place. It can be frustrating, but I would imagine at the time that, yeah, it probably, well, even as a kid, I remember that, because I grew up on the Lower West Side, which is a lot of hippies and state workers mixed in together, a lot of student housing, and I mean, it was like a total diss to be called a greener. Like, it'd be like, oh, what are you, a greener? Or a granola. People would like yell granola at you if you were walking down the street and you looked like a hippie. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's a long running and ongoing dichotomy in Olympia of like freaky artists versus really conservative folks. So.
What was there an explosion of stuff in the early 90s, or did you see it more as just like a steady build? Do you know what I mean?
Well, to me, it felt like an explosion, but that's because I didn't even know that world existed. Like, I really didn't. When I went to my first punk show with my friend Carla, I just felt like I had been transported into some amazing portal in Olympia that I'd been looking for a place where everything was, exciting, energetic, totally different, weird, just totally different from my high school experience. I went to a really conservative high school, and so in my 16-year-old mind, it was an explosion. And it was certainly for me, but I can't say. I mean, I think you'd want to talk to someone, like Calvin or Pat, about whether it was just this slowly building thing, or if it actually was exploding in energy in the early 90s, or if I just felt that way because I was a teenager.
How would you describe what was going on in Seattle at that time?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't cool, like I went to Seattle with my friends and went to Broadway and bought Fimo bead necklaces and knockoff Doc Martens, and I went to some Sub Pop shows, and I really liked Mudhoney. That was kind of the band I thought was really awesome. I yeah, I wasn't really into Pearl Jam or Allison. It just seemed like kind of this like, grunge, which is Olympia's grungy too, but it seemed like this, this kind of grunge that I wasn't really into with like beards and Guatemalan hats and that Yarling type of singing. I think it's called Yarling now, that Pearl Jam.
You got a name for it now?
Yeah, I think it's called Yarling.
Oh, that's
or
good.
I could be making that up, but like, that whole like
Fucking finally.
Alice in Chains kind of thing. I wasn't. I did. Oh, I did like Soundgarden too, and I think that goes with my whole like. I was starting to play electric guitar at the time, and I really loved, Black Sabbath and stuff, and I thought Kim Thale was a really badass guitar player. But I never like, made an effort to go see them play or anything. I don't know. Seattle kind of seemed like this. To me, then it seemed like an exciting place to go with your friends on the weekend, just because. I mean, most of the shows there, with a handful of exceptions, were bar shows, so I couldn't go to a show anyway. But it just seemed like the place to go to get cool clothes or something. I don't know.
Do you think there's a difference between bands that are like friends first and become bands, and bands who are like, we want to have a band and you play guitar and I play this, and then they kind of stick it together?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's a total difference. I feel like, I mean, I've actually never been in a band that was, like my tight friends that I grew up with, but I think you can tell with a band like Carp. I think in a band where you kind of are like, well, I play guitar, and oh, I heard you're a good bass player, and so will you play in my band? And oh, and then he's such a good drummer, and his band broke up, and so let's all play music together. You have to get to know each other on a deeper level, whereas through touring and stuff, and it can be kind of awkward at times. But I think when you can tell when a band has had a lot of history together. I mean, for one thing, it's probably just more intuitive. They're playing with each other. And for another thing, like I was saying before, there's just this kind of, it's not a gang in a typical sense, but it's this kind of, I feel like these kind of bonds are formed that are like, it's going to be us against the world. And like, you fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us kind of thing. And yeah, I think you can definitely sense that when you see a band play live if they have a lot of history together. I mean, it can also lend itself to those awkward, moments of tension between people because they do have history. But I think that all makes for a better show, at least to me. I mean, unless it goes incredibly, terribly awry.
Do you think that comes out of their high school experience?
I mean, I don't know. I couldn't say, but just like I think a lot about teenage years and how, because of all this stuff that's going on inside of your body, like hormones and all this crap, it's like you feel things on such an intense level. Like sometimes some people might say, like, oh, I wish I could be a teenager, like anything to be 15 again. And to me, it's like, that's kind of the enemy. Like, I would not ever want to be 15 again, just because the level of how you feel things is just, it's like every day there's a different thing that seems like the end of the world. And I could never handle that in my life now. But yeah, what was the question?
Just where, like, you think that's, if it's this kind of, like, it's just us, comes from, like,
Yeah.
Banding together early on, when it
I think so. I mean, high school. Do you guys have a technical difficulty?
Yeah, I gotta switch the tapes. No, it's not battery, it's the tape.
Oh, I thought you were putting the battery, sorry.